Continue to this. So coming to another important part, consent. Now, what is the importance of consent in telemedicine? Let me ask Dr. Ravindra, then Dr. Achal, and then lastly but not the least, Mr. Bhola. So consent, the way I see it, and I just give a little background, consent is an express consent and then there is a implied consent. So when a patient walks into my OPD, there is an implied consent that yes, you've asked me for a consult and I'm giving it to you, right? It's implied. I don't have to take a consent from you. Then there are parts when you get into a procedure or surgery where you're supposed to take a proper consent, which is a legal consent. And so there are these two consents, and believe me, Mr. Bhola, can you, if you would, support me in this? What I understood from lawyers is that 75 to 80% of the times doctors get into trouble is because of two things: one, improper consent, and number two, improper records. Is that correct?
Very true. Very true. Dr. Shenoy, in this regard, I would like to say, a person when goes to the hospital, it's the implied consent that he wants to avail the facilities. But the moment he enters into and his admission is recorded, that your admission is there to be there, he is supposed to sign the consent form. The same way, when a person is approaching telemedicine, that is the implied consent that when he knew about the doctor and then about the competence of the doctor and seeking his opinion. So that is one aspect. But the moment, and for that also, for telemedicine, as I said, it's a nascent stage. We need to have certain consents being there as such to be clicked, to be ticked, to be checked by the patient before he seeks the advice from the doctor. Second, which comes is, for all the things, whether consent, and the question which you have put down is, the safeguard for the doctor in all such things are that yes, I had the consent and accordingly I carried out. Now there are two things which are coming down there. Of course, when the patient is being seen physically or is being operated, these are two different aspects when the patient is being operated. But in telemedicine, once he's coming over, that should be taken to be first thing. That is the implied consent is there.
So, Dr. Gulati, would you like to say a little more about consent, especially in context of telemedicine? Would you like to advise doctors on this?
I think, Dr. Shenoy, there was a time when all of us were residents and the standard consent used to be, I'm willing to undergo any kind of surgery under any kind of anesthesia by any kind of surgeon, the risks of which have been explained to me in detail. Babaji, sign karna karo, nahi karna jao. So everybody used to sign, but those days are gone now. Basic thing in everything is you have to protect your back. And to protect my back, I need to have a good, proper consent. Today it may not be possible in the government setup, but in corporate setup, all consents have a consent room where they are taken and they are audio visualized and they are taped over there, so that there is no confusion as far as the consent is concerned. Because one point which is left out of the consent could create a problem for you. I can enumerate 10 complications, and the 11th one happens. The patient will say, I have not given the consent, or nor was I informed about the risks of that. So one has to be very careful with the consent. Once the person has approached you on a telecall for a teleconferencing or a telemedicine consultation, it becomes an implied consent. However, to be on the safer side, it is always better to be more sure about it. You can, develop a system if you are going in for a telemedicine, teleconsultation on a routine basis, that I'm going to send you an OTP, you send me back if you agree to the thing, I have implied consent. Then next comes is if the consent is taken by a caregiver who is taking it on behalf of the patient. Or once the caregiver is taking a consent, then I have to be explicitly sure that the patient has authorized the caregiver to take a teleconsult from me, and he's taking it on behalf of the patient. So that consent also has to be very clear onto this. But one must be careful with the type of consultation or with the type of consent that you are taking.
So let us move on from consent. So what I understood from Mr. Bhola and Dr. Gulati is there is something called implied consent. Maybe it is good till we get more clarity for doctors to choose a platform where they can actually get a proper consent done separately. Yes, Dr. Ravindra, would you like to say something?
Consent is a must. I will again repeat, these are just extension of the existing code of ethics. Implied consent is only and only if the patient on his own initiates a telemedicine chat. But if a doctor has to initiate a telemedicine protocol, he has to take a consent and a proper regular legal consent as we take for any routine consultation or procedure.